This is the lecture for Chapter 1, Section 3 Notes for Biology. Section 3 is Studying Life. So when we talk about the study of life and living things, that is biology, all living things share a certain set of characteristics that separate them from non-living things, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Some living things, such as viruses, exist in the border between living and non-living, and we're going to talk about why we classify viruses as non-living. What are organisms? This is a term that you should have probably heard in your life science in 7th grade. An organism is a living thing. So what makes something living and it makes it different from non-living things? What are the things that set apart a living thing from a non-living thing? Those things are what we call the characteristics of life, and there are 8 of them. Now you need to realize that these are the ones we are going to talk about. Some books and some scientists define ones that are slightly different. For us, these are the characteristics of life. These are the things that we learn about that every living thing needs to have in order to be considered alive. They need to be made of more than one cell. They need to have heredity, grow and develop, reproduce, respond to stimuli. They require energy. They maintain homeostasis, and they adapt and evolve over time. We're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail now. The first one would be one or more cells. So in order to be classified as living, you need to have at least one cell. Cells are the basic unit of life. All of those characteristics of life can be carried out in one single cell. But if you do not have even one single cell, then you are not considered living. Viruses do not have a cell. They are not a cell themselves. So since they do not have a cell, they are not made up of cells, we do not classify them as living things. Heredity. This is simply what makes something up. It's their genetic code. It's their DNA. Like you. What makes you you? Why does someone have brown eyes instead of blue eyes? That genetic trait that tells your body, your cells, how to run. This is your heredity. It's your DNA. Something that is alive needs to grow and develop. Growth means that it continues to add mass, and development means that it increases in maturity level or goes from like a juvenile to an adult. Things continue to grow and develop throughout their life. Even humans, we will continue to grow and develop. We replace dead skin cells. We, have bones heal if we have injuries. So even humans continue to grow and develop even once they reach adulthood. Response to stimuli. Living things must respond and adjust to their environment. If they don't, they will not survive. These stimuli can be internal or external. If it's real quiet in a room and somebody comes up and drops a book and you weren't expecting it, you jump. That's the response. The stimulus would be the book falling. If we talk about, say, a predator in an ecosystem, if a prey does not respond to that predator in the ecosystem, then the prey is not going to survive. That is a response to stimuli. Reproduction. Simply making more of their own kind. If an organism does not survive to reproduce and pass on its heredity, its genetic traits, then the species will not survive. All living things require energy. Some organisms are able to produce their own energy, like plants, and others are like animals, where they need to consume energy in order to survive. All living things need to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is a constant internal environment. So what happens is, let's say you're sick. Your body responds to that germ that's in your body. That's an internal stimulus. The response is that it sends out the white blood cells to attack that thing. Maybe you start to get a temperature. That is all a response, and it is a response in order to try to maintain homeostasis. Something is wrong in the body, and they are attempting to try to fix what is wrong in the body. The last characteristics of life is to adapt and evolve over time. Organisms need to adapt to their surroundings. If not, they will go extinct. Species need to adapt over time. Small changes in evolution can happen very, very quickly. Big changes can take billions of years. Beneficial adaptations get passed on from generation to generation. This is the idea of the strongest will survive. So when we perform biological investigations, there's a few things we need to keep in mind. One is how we perform scientific measurements, and we're going to talk more about the scientific measurement in science in another separate PowerPoint. We're going to talk about the metric system. Universally, that is what scientists use. Scientists use the International System of Measurement, or the metric system. They use it because, one, it is used universally. It's used around the world, so other scientists and other people can understand your results. It's also very easy to convert because it is based in tens. So all we simply need to do is move the decimal point. With scientific measurement, the basic unit of length is a meter, the basic unit of mass is a gram, and the basic unit of volume is a liter. Whenever we're talking about making something bigger or smaller, we have those prefixes, and looking at the prefix, like centi is going to be smaller, and kilo would be bigger. So a kilometer is bigger than a meter, and a centimeter is smaller than a meter. Again, in our metric system unit, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about that. We're also going to talk in a separate little mini unit about safety, lab safety equipment, and the equipment in a lab setting. So when we talk about safety, the number one rule is to listen to the teacher and follow the directions. Before you start each activity, you should always listen to those directions. You should always read the directions. Always follow the directions and follow what the teacher says. We'll talk more about that in a separate PowerPoint. We're going to do a mini lesson on lab safety.